Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, a new centre of excellence to help drive Alberta's economy. But first, from Pierre Poilievre on the Joe Rogan podcast, the impact of rising fuel prices, teens and screen time, and a 20-year vision for Calgary Stampede Park. Let's kick off the program with our Primetime This Week panel. And joining us this evening, Tom Keenan, professor in the School of Architecture, Planning and Landscape at the University of Calgary, also the author of Techno Creep, and Darren Krause, editor and founder of LiveWire Calgary. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with Pierre Poilievre's Week South of the Border.
It's great to be in the United States of America. Americans love Canada. That's the great news that I take away from this trip.
A federal Conservative leader made a multitude of stops, including New York, meeting with the governor of Texas, as well as oil industry executives, and maybe most notable, sitting down with popular yet divisive podcast host Joe Rogan to talk up Canada.
So there's a narrative in America. And the narrative is that you were about to win and your party was about to win, but then Trump came along and said he was going to turn Canada into the 51st state, and everybody went crazy. Is that accurate?
I wouldn't say they went crazy. So we're never going to be the 51st state. And I just wish he'd knock that off so that we can get back to talking about the things that we can do.
Joe Rogan's podcast has a massive audience, an average of 11 million per episode, and Pierre Poilievre sought to leverage that audience while confirming he hasn't spoken with the U.S. president.
I've said, listen, I'll leave it to the Prime Minister to do the negotiating, and I've said I'll support him any way I can. Even in my visit down here, I'm sending him text messages to tell him what's going on.
Rogan had invited Poilievre to come on during the last election, but the Conservative leader declined. Now the party says the podcast is an ideal platform to reach more potential voters while also speaking to Americans. Tom, what do you feel Pierre Poilievre stands to accomplish by appearing in this nearly 2.5-hour-long podcast? How big a deal is it?
It's big. He got to use the S word in the same sentence as Donald Trump. You have to bleep it, but we've all heard it. And, in a podcast, you can basically say whatever you want. I think, he's reaching a huge audience. There's no question about that. It is the #1 podcast in Canada. And he did good things. He defended Alberta's environmental policies. Okay, definitely said that. He shot down Alberta's separatism. So, there were certain things that he could probably say down there in the belly of the beast that he wouldn't have been as comfortable saying in a Canadian setting. So I think on balance, it lost him a few votes, like the Alberta separatists, but it gained him probably a lot more.
Well, and Darren, maybe on that point, how far does this go to helping the Conservative leader and Alberta MP here on the home front turn the tide on polling that has had Poilievre and his party well behind Mark Carney and the Liberals?
Well, you know what? I'm going to sound exactly like Tom here. I mean, this was a great move by Poilievre. First off, the critical mass alone. Joe Rogan has nearly 21 million subscribers to his podcast. And, I mean, only 5 hours after the podcast had happened, there was 450,000 people who had already viewed it. But there were other things, though. I mean, he talked about trade, which is a really hot button issue, and making sure that there's tariff-free trade here between the U.S. and Canada. And, there's a couple of other key things here. Like, he wasn't always on the attack against Mark Carney and the Liberals, which I think is a really, really change in tone that may appeal to a lot more people. But the one thing that stuck out to me was his appearance. In past campaigns and in past photo ops, he's almost had this bro image, and that would have really fit well with the Joe Rogan podcast. But instead, he was in this really nice, nice fitting, well tailored blue suit that sort of balanced off the blue collar-esqueness of Joe Rogan's podcast. So all in all, I think it was a great thing for Pierre Poilievre.
All right, next up for us, climbing oil prices and how the impact at the pumps has Albertans hunting for what remains of the best deals. This Domo gas station on Edmonton's 118th Ave becoming something of a local landmark.
I downloaded Gas Buddy, the app, and I did that last night, and so that's purely why I was drawn to this location.
The price is a little bit lesser than the other petrol pumps.
I think it's 15 cents cheaper per liter.
And extra time in the queue, giving some customers a moment to ponder life, like planning their days to be a little more fuel efficient.
I used to keep 2 vehicles. I stopped to 1.
I'll go try and hit the grocery store and another errand, kind of in the same loop.
With ongoing conflict in the Middle East, Alberta-based economist Moshe Lander says pump prices are not likely to go down anytime soon.
This could extend for most of 2026. I don't want to be a doomsayer and predict disaster, but it's hard to see how somehow this just goes back to business as usual.
Lander predicts the tipping point for many could come later this year with utility bills. Darren, some significant lineups there. At what point do you see Albertans changing their habits, be that parking their vehicles or just throwing the brakes on spending, period?
You know what? In a perfect world, we'd all love for us to go, oh, hey, this is a time to switch to transit or bike. I just don't think it's going to happen. Albertans are all too familiar with these kinds of price swings, and I think most people just price it into the cost of life. There are some people who may opt for the bike or transit or combined trips like the one guest said there. But I think most people are, just like me, willing to hunt for the right deal and wait in line if necessary. I was in, a situation where I could have had fuel at $1.40. I waited 1 day and I had to pay $1.52. So we're all hunting for those gas deals when the prices are this high.
Tom, does there come a point when this begins to resemble the energy crisis of the 1970s?
Yeah, as a reminder, back in 1974, the price per barrel went abruptly up from $3 to $12 a barrel. So if only we could have those prices now. I worked it out that $3 number would be $20 in today's U.S. dollars. But another effect back then is, at least in North America, we saw a move towards smaller cars. So all of a sudden, all the car makers are bringing out something that was more fuel efficient. Remember that Mr. Carney is going to let 49,000 Chinese EVs into the country potentially this year. And this might make them a lot more popular if they are more economical. To the point about changing habits, I had to go to the Foothills Hospital yesterday. Last time I went up there, I spent like 20 minutes looking for parking. Yesterday, I took the bus, and it was there in 20 minutes, and I didn't have to look for parking. So I guess it's already changed my habit a little bit.
Oh, there you go. All right. Time for us to take a bit of a break. But when we come back, tracking teen screen time and its impact on mental health, plus big plans for transforming Calgary's Stampede Park. More from our Primetime This Week panel in a moment. Welcome back. If, as a parent, it seems like your teens are spending more time than ever on their screens, you probably aren't imagining it. Turns out that doom scrolling isn't just a catchy name, it's a statistical trend. Stats Canada researchers followed a group of youth aged 12 to 17 from 2019 to 23, tracking screen habits and mental health. Only 14% consistently met daily screen time guidelines of 2 to 3 hours per day.
I'm up, I'm scrolling. I eat breakfast, I'm scrolling. I go to school, I come back, I'm scrolling. It's bad, it's an addiction. I don't like it, but I can't really stop it.
Usually like 5-ish hours a day. Yeah, same.
The study found nearly 60% of those who remained within the limit reported excellent or very good mental health. For those who consistently exceeded it, that number dropped to 38%.
Among the girls and women, we noticed that those who followed the guidelines were more likely to report that they had not considered suicide in the past 12 months than the women and girls who exceeded the guidelines. On the other hand, when we looked at boys and men, we noticed that those who followed the guidelines were more likely to report getting a grade of 70% or higher in school.
Meanwhile, a new World Happiness Report shows Canada has dropped 6 places to 25th this year, and heavy social media use is being singled out.
We are in a truly unprecedented time in terms of the rate at which everything is changing. For the first time, you could probably say in our species, youth who are becoming adults do not have a clear picture of what they're supposed to do.
Now, for those wondering, Finland ranked as the world's happiest for a 9th straight year. Tom, as a university prof, how does this dialogue around doom scrolling and young adults not knowing what to do, how does that track with you?
Yeah, I've walked in the back of classroom, not my own class, but somebody else's class, and seen all the people. Now, they often have their laptops open, and I would say it breaks down to be a third, a third, a third. A third of them are, they have Word open, and they're diligently writing down everything the professor says, and that may or may not be a good idea. A third of them are researching, looking into what is that. I actually like that, particularly with AI. If I say a word up in the front of the class, rather than have them interrupt the class, and what does that mean? If they can get it from AI, so much the better. And then a third of them are buying things on eBay, making dates on Tinder, and doing stuff like that. And I wish yesterday when I was on that bus, I would have been allowed to take a picture. I know you're not supposed to take pictures on buses, but it wouldn't have mattered because everybody for the whole length of the bus had their nose down in the camera and in their cell phone scrolling through something. One thing I want to commend is that PSA with all the sports figures like Connor McDavid saying, hey, I wouldn't have, had the childhood that I did if I had been scrolling all the time. We used to go out there and play street hockey, and I think that's a good thing that he did that instead of scrolling on his phone.
Darren, as someone who probably played street hockey back in the day, what do you take away now with these stats as a parent of teens?
Well, my name is Darren, and I have 2 screenagers. No, honestly, when I was a kid, my parents harped on me to walk the dog, clean my room, take out the trash. And I think today, with my 2 teens, the one thing I find myself saying more than anything is get off your phone. Just this morning, I had to light a fire under my 13-year-old because he was scrolling instead of eating his breakfast and then getting to brushing his teeth and putting together his lunch. The good thing is, my 15-year-old, we were driving to a football workout, and he said to me, he goes, Dad, I've really got to break the habit of going on my phone when there's a lull in the action, in between conversations, in between activities, that sort of thing. So at least there's an acknowledgement of the issue. It is a problem, and it needs more attention, specifically from parents, in my mind.
Yeah, I agree with you, 110%. 2 teens at home as well. Okay, one more topic, and that's the new 20-year vision for Calgary Stampede Park, one that includes a possible replacement for McMahon Stadium, home of the Calgary Stampeders.
The reality is that we only play there 10 games a year, and so it has to be a stadium that is going to be, in my opinion anyway, city-led.
The Calgary Stampede unveiled a master plan this week to transform Stampede Park, and it would see the home of the rodeo and chucks also functioning as a field for the Stampeders.
Where a field comes over the top so that you're preserving the track, you're preserving the rodeo arena, that's the approach that would need to be taken.
This is a big step forward in the right direction for the growth of the visitor economy.
Well, with construction of the new arena now well underway, would the mayor be open to public money for yet another stadium project?
I think we need to strike a better balance than what we've seen in previous deals. But, I'm open to public investment if there's a public benefit and a public return on that investment.
Demolition of the Big Four building and its replacement is also in the plans, along with an upgraded agricultural building. Darren, you've had all kinds of LiveWire Calgary coverage on all of this. Just how ambitious, maybe even how realistic is this 20-year master plan?
Well, there's no doubt it's ambitious. It's ambitious just on the base that you see there. But if they actually realize everything, I think it goes beyond ambitious. And you know what? For all the heat that the Calgary Stampede takes for the rodeo and such, which is an annual thing, this is an organization that embraces and embodies the pioneer spirit here in Calgary. So to that end, I don't doubt that while hopelessly ambitious, the Calgary Stampede executes on this vision for the park. I think for them, while it will take time, it's mostly realistic, except for perhaps that arena aspect, which might take a little bit of pushing, with the city in order to get it done.
All right, Tom, last 30 seconds to you. How's it land with you as a Calgarian?
It's going to be great. They're going to fix problems like the overcrowding at the Coca-Cola stage. McMahon Stadium, however, has a special place in my heart. 1988 Winter Olympics opening and closing ceremonies, Pavarotti in concert. But the reality is, it is getting long in the tooth. Full disclosure, my employer, the University of Calgary, owns it. I think it probably should be replaced. I'm just hoping when they replace it, they don't put up condos. We don't need more condos right now. Let's make it some kind of a public athletic amenity.
All right, we're clear out of time, guys. Thank you kindly. Hope you have an awesome weekend.
You too, Michael. Thank you.
The transportation sector is hugely important in Canada, 7,000 kilometers from coast to coast. How many goods are shipped from one port to another? That's going to be critical as well then in dragging inflation up.
Economist Moshe Lander on the far-reaching impact of rising oil prices with conflict in the Middle East raging on, and as global trade dynamics evolve, a new collaborative effort announced in February taking a foothold in our province, one focused on transportation and logistics as a critical driver of Alberta's economy. And joining us now, Tom McCaffrey, Executive Director of the new Alberta Logistics Centre of Excellence. Mr. McCaffrey, welcome to Alberta Primetime.
Thank you very much for having me.
You must be hitting the ground running because, as we saw in the visuals there, it was just over a month ago the announcement was made for the Centre of Excellence.
Yeah, we have another announcement coming up tomorrow with the rest of our funding partners, and so we're excited to formally get fully launched. We have spent the last few months in preparation, doing a lot of different things that we needed to do to get up and running, and we're here and ready to go. Looking forward to it.
The announcement in February involved the federal government awarding Mount Royal University in Calgary $1.5 million. So what exactly is the Centre of Excellence?
The Centre of Excellence is basically an organization that's started through Mount Royal University and the Institute for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Mount Royal. And it's an organization that comes together to support transportation logistics companies throughout the province. We'll have different levels of programs that we want to deliver, and we're going to be helping companies adopt technology and execute their growth strategies over the next coming 3 years.
So what makes this necessary? What gap does it aim to fill in our province? Because you have to think there's lots around that deals with logistics.
Well, logistics is pretty ubiquitous in everything that we do. And so everything from your dentist's office to your local food store to the house you may be building, those are all personal ways that you interact with logistics, probably in a lot of ways without even recognizing it. Obviously, at a higher level across the economy, oil and gas, through to new opportunities and critical materials are all going to be highly dependent on how well we do as a province in continuing the growth of our logistics sector. And they're facing great challenges. So why now? Everything from different geopolitical issues that have been going on. Obviously, during the pandemic, we became acutely aware of how challenging it can be for our logistics organizations to continue to meet the demands amongst those types of challenges. And so as much as these are strong companies that are enabling us to live the lives we currently lead, they need help too, and we are one of the resources at their disposal.
How hands-on do you get?
The programs that we will be delivering will take different, likely from the middle of these companies who, managers, vice presidents, supervisors, and our focus will be to support them to achieve the goals that they've set for themselves as an organization. So technology can be adopted, and in many ways, these organizations have a keen eye for what it is that, they need to get them to the next level. We are a neutral and, excellent resource for them to tap into to help them to achieve those goals more quickly and more efficiently. And, that can be the challenge. They are all facing the day-to-day challenge of running their businesses, and sometimes those growth plans, technology adoption plans can get stalled out. And the Center of Excellence is here to help make sure that that doesn't happen.
Maybe to pick up on one of those points there, in dealing with business dynamics, how do you maintain neutrality in the guidance you're providing?
Well, I mean, being able to focus specifically on what these companies are doing to achieve growth, how they operate, the upskilling of the individuals. As we know, lots of new technologies are coming onto the market. They have excellent staff members that are there and likely need some sort of boost. We are not there to sell them on any particular technology in and of itself. And these companies aren't technology experts. Sometimes they need help in not necessarily the development of the strategy, but the execution component. And again, there can be gaps, whether that is in the need to upskill, or maybe it's just in the need for certain kinds of advice that an organization like ours has to offer, both through the expertise that we employ and also through things like our advisory panel that we have that's here to help guide us along the way.
Tom, as consumers, many of us probably take the movement of goods and services for granted. Why is now the time for Albertans generally to have a better understanding of what's happening on the supply management side with transportation and logistics, especially where the Alberta economy is concerned?
Yeah, it's rare that we see the outcomes of a really large challenge. And that is because in a lot of ways, our logistics companies are the best firefighters in the world, if you want to put it in a simplistic way. They're good at understanding that Port X is closed to them for a while, so they're going to go to Port B for a while. And they're good at understanding that this road is washed out. I have to find alternatives to what it is to get what my customer needs where it needs to go. Why now is that there are new opportunities here. So yes, we tend to focus on the challenges. We focus on what's blocking us. We focus on things that are very significant for us from an economic and a geopolitical standpoint. But the reality is that there are opportunities in all of those challenges. And sometimes those opportunities are obvious and sometimes they're not. And so an organization like the Center of Excellence is really there to support those companies if they know where they're going, to help them to achieve the goals that they've set. If they have new goals that they're interested in going after or trying to understand where those opportunities are, again, we're here to support them to achieve the goals that they have and get to the growth and the supply chain resilience that are both important to our economy, but then also important to Albertans.
All right, and maybe, Tom, as a final question, and it's one around timing, how critical is it to be launching this Logistics Center of Excellence right now?
Well, I think all one has to do is look at the news to see all of the different things that we are faced with as a country. Our trade partners are shifting their focus. There are just so many different things. And, it feels a bit cliche to talk about how all of these things are stacking up and how this is a time that is faster moving than ever. And there's probably people that said that a year ago, and we're saying it even more so today. I don't think you can really refute the amount of challenges in the system. And so timing really couldn't be better. I don't think there's, I don't want to tempt fate to say that there's not many more things that we could face in terms of challenge, but I think an organization like this should be hopefully really well received and well timed. And so, we're here at the starting line right in the right moment.
All right. Speaking of timing, we'll have to leave it there for time. Appreciate your time this evening, Mr. McCaffrey. Thank you kindly.
I appreciate it, and thank you very much.
Tom McCaffrey, Executive Director of the Alberta Logistics Center of Excellence. Now, here are a few responses to a recent story posted by CTV News about new UCP legislation restricting access to medical assistance in dying. Wheel says there has to be some restrictions on MAID. The problem is it's a slippery slope. Tweeds writes, that's this new far-right conservatism for you. Getting involved in an individual's personal decision is absolutely not the business of any government. Kyle thinks Alberta is the only sane province in the entire country, and Marg says another step backwards. Remember, you can always have your say. Email us anytime at comments@albertaprimetime.com. That is our program for tonight. Have a great evening and a great weekend, everyone, from all of us at Alberta Primetime. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time.